You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Friday the 21st of June 2013. Illegal African butchers pensioner. 1,000 child porn paedophiles spared jail. UK has second go at EU listings of Hezbollah. Guards rebel over record French prisoner numbers. Some 1,000 migrants packed into 300-person facility in Italy. Nick Griffin MEP on Syria and BNP influence on UK politics. Standing still, a new form of protest in Turkey. Kerry called for immediate airstrikes on Syria. Cameron's bid to spark Syria coup. PM pledges not to remove Assad military if they overthrow tyrant. Hundreds of Western fighters captured by pro-Assad forces. Thought for the day, vive la différence, or is it? And finally, aliens have landed in Whitby. UK news. Illegal African butchers pensioner. A delusional killer who entered the country on a false passport was today sentenced to remain indefinitely in hospital for butchering a pensioner who he believed was the Antichrist. Hakeem Abdullahi, 38, repeatedly stabbed Eleftheria Demetrio, 79, with such ferocity last August the blade snapped off. Abdullahi, who came to Britain from African country Djibouti in 1999 pretending to be 6 years younger, launched the frenzied attack a month after being discharged from hospital where he was being treated for a personality disorder. World at 8 says probably schizophrenia, they're all sodding mad. 1,000 child porn paedophiles spared jail. 2/3 of perverts caught downloading sickening child pornography escaped jail sentence, figures revealed last night. In a new soft justice outrage, 1,000 paedophiles caught in possession of obscene abuse videos and pictures were handed community sentences or suspended jail terms last year. The revelation was greeted with fury by child abuse campaigners who are demanding tougher sentences to reflect the damage done to children pictured in the horrific images. UK has second go at EU listing of Hezbollah. The UK will have a second go at persuading sceptics to blacklist Hezbollah at meetings in Brussels on Wednesday. Britain in May filed a proposal to designate the military wing of the Lebanese group as a terrorist entity. France, Germany and the Netherlands back the idea, even though The Hague would prefer to list Hezbollah's political bureau as well. Several other countries, including Bulgaria, Estonia and Hungary, are willing to go with the flow if consensus comes together. European news. Guards rebel over record French prisoner numbers. France has more inmates behind bars than ever before, it was revealed this week, prompting prison guards to call for industrial action to protest against overcrowding and the lack of resources, which they say are undermining their safety. France's prison system appears to be at breaking point. Official figures revealed this week showed that on June the 1st, the country had 67,977 inmates locked up in its jails, representing the highest number of prisoners in France's history. With the official combined capacity of French correctional facilities at 57,325, the country's prisons are overcrowded to the tune of 19%. This oversaturation, along with concerns about staff safety and a lack of resources, has prompted the UFAP-UNSA Prison Guards Union to call for strike action on Tuesday. This is a shot across the bows to make the powers that be aware of the urgency of the situation. Union Secretary-General Stéphanie Barrou was reported as saying by BFM TV on Monday. World at 8 says, Front National need to step in here. No doubt this vast influx in prison numbers is due to high immigration in France as well as over here. Liberals don't realise that every single immigrant is a mouth to feed, to educate, to give birth, to get a job and maybe to prosecute and to imprison in the host country. Some 1,000 migrants packed into a 300-person facility in Italy. A delegation of Northern League parliamentarians on Wednesday travelled to the southern Italian island of Lampedusa for a surprise inspection of an immigrant holding centre. After the many landings of illegal immigrants yesterday and this morning, we want to check the situation, said Deputy House Whip Matteo Brigantini, who will be visiting the centre with another 4 MPs with the Northern League, a Conservative party which often adopts extreme stances on migration issues. In the meantime, people were seen overcrowding balconies and staircases at the Lampedusa centre. The number of migrants to Italy increases annually in the summer months as sea conditions improve. However, large numbers of people, usually packed inside unsafe boats, still die en route. The Lampedusa centre was holding 1,150 people on Wednesday after another 97 immigrants arrived during the morning. Hundreds of immigrants in the past few days have been rescued or landed along Lampedusa's coast as warm weather has brought calmer seas. Reports on Wednesday said 200 immigrants who arrived in Lampedusa in recent days will be flown from the southern island to a centre in Cagliari, Sardinia. World at 8 says, "In my typical way, I say bring on the storms and stop rescuing the buggers. They all seem to have an innate sense that someone will help them out, and time for that is stopping now. Europe should make sure that all the millions in foreign aid reach the people for whom it is intended, to prevent scenarios like this, which are a form of blackmail thinly disguised as asylum seekers." Standing still, a new form of protest in Turkey. Thousands of people are now expressing their anger with Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan by standing silent and motionless in streets and squares, a new tactic that they hope will deter police violence. The aggressive police response to anti-government protests in Turkey in recent weeks has left 4 people dead and many injured. Many more have been arrested. Demonstrating for greater freedom and civil rights, the protesters have marched through the streets of Istanbul, smeared walls with anti-government graffiti and chanted slogans calling on Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan to step down. Istanbul's Gezi Park became the focus of the protest movement. Thousands camped out there eating, dancing and singing songs. Police put an end to that last weekend when they cleared the park by force. World at 8 says, "This was done in a book some years ago set in a world taken over by the Chinese and run along the lines of true racism. That is, you had to be Chinese or part Chinese to escape slavery, much like Islam is over religion but not blood. In the book they stand on one leg like a crane. I always say silent protests move more mountains than noisy, shouting ones." Belly of the beast. I now hand you over to Nick Griffin MEP for his report on his Syrian visit and the British National Party influence on British politics.
My visit to Syria didn't just stun the controlled media into a day of straight and factual reporting about it. It also helped to reshape the political discussion over events which, although a long way away, are critically important to us in Britain. My invitation to become the first MEP to visit Syria since the Islamist invasion 2 years ago came from the Vienna-based European Institute for Geopolitical Analysis. This organisation primarily specialises in providing teams of independent election monitors. Regular listeners will remember that I served with them in elections in both Russia and Ukraine over the last 2 years, in both cases reporting that the systems in use are, shamefully, much more open and democratic than in the rotten and corrupt shambles here in the UK. In this case, however, the Institute had been asked not to monitor elections, but by the Syrian Foreign Ministry to find a group of open-minded politicians and journalists to go to Damascus and see the situation there for themselves. The Syrians' main concern was to draw attention to, and begin work to try to resolve, the problem of the hundreds of Islamist terrorists from EU countries, including dozens from Britain, fighting with the cutthroat rebels on the Turkish border. The other most prominent member of the resulting delegation was Vlaams-Belang MEP Philip de Winter, on whose book about Islam, you may remember, I did a lot of work the other year, still available from Excalibur Books, and well worth reading. Also present were Polish, French and Belgian journalists and my old comrade and former MEP Roberto Fiore, leader of Italy's Forza Nuova party. A 180-degree U-turn by the BBC was the most immediate result of all the publicity surrounding my visit. When the media picked up and made big news of my tweets about Damascus being remarkably normal, with less security and fewer signs of war than Belfast in the 1980s, this broke a propaganda image that had been pushed by the UK's controlled media for more than 2 whole years. Having done an unused interview with me in the wreckage of a police station hit by a double suicide bombing in the middle of Damascus, the BBC knew that the footage of the remarkable normality otherwise of life in the huge city that I was going to release on the internet on my return would expose the entire mainstream media as liars. Hence the remarkable decision of the BBC to broadcast a spoiler report, telling the world that, contrary to all previous reports of a city and state in chaos and crisis, life in Damascus is as normal as could possibly be under the circumstances, and comfortable, and large numbers of Syrians strongly support their president. In one go, this cut swathes of ground from under the feet of Cameron and the other warmongers, whose lies in favour of arming the head-cutting rebels centre on the claim that the Syrian people are desperate to be freed from a tyrannical government. Well, in Damascus, I can tell you they are not. I met people from all different confessions, Shia, Sunni, Alawite, Christians, atheists, agnostics. All of them want to remain in Syria as it is, because despite the undoubted faults of the government, which they all accept, even the government ministers, it's one hell of a lot better than being ruled by Wahhabi Sunni extremists who are openly in favour and advocate and carry out the mass murder of anyone who isn't their kind of Sunni, whether it's Christian, Shia, Alawite or moderate Sunnis. People are desperately scared of those people taking over, the people bringing terror and fear to still parts of Syria are the same rebels that Cameron and co want to arm. They say they want to arm the moderates. I can tell you there are effectively no moderates. There's a few so-called liberals in political positions in the Free Syrian Army, but the vast number of those on the ground, and I met a number of captured rebels, the vast number of the ones on the ground are hardcore Islamist, giving guns, giving anti-aircraft missiles to those people. They may as well give them direct to the cells of people who are operating in Britain, just like the ones who murdered Lee Rigby. It's an appalling proposal and something I'm very proud in this trip, in this visit, to have done at least something to make harder. Because before I went to Syria, no mainstream British politician had gone public with serious opposition to Cameron's insane plan to arm the rebels. But within 24 hours of the BNP position becoming big news, Nigel Farage, senior Tory MEP Daniel Hannan, and London Mayor Boris Johnson were queuing up to make high-profile echoes of my warning. So even though the BNP is so unfairly treated by the controlled media, and even though we often don't achieve the electoral breakthroughs that the popularity of our ideas deserve, we are still having an increasing impact on the direction of British politics. And I tell you this, they ain't seen nothing yet.
Thank you, Nick. You were much missed last week and welcome back. World news. Kerry called for immediate airstrikes on Syria. Joint Chiefs of Staff rejected ludicrous rush to war. US Secretary of State John Kerry called for immediate airstrikes on Syria last week following the Obama administration's claim that President Bashar al-Assad had used chemical weapons, a rush to war that was soundly rejected by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. After Kerry called for Syrian airfields to be attacked, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, threw a series of brushback pitches at Kerry, demanding to know just exactly what the post-strike plan would be and pointing out that the State Department didn't fully grasp the complexity of such an operation. According to the report, Kerry seemed ignorant of the fact that Syria has a sophisticated air defence system that would have to be neutralised, with almost inevitable loss of life, before any airstrikes could be conducted. Kerry was told by Dempsey that the US Air Force could not simply drop a few bombs on Syria without first carrying out some 700 sorties to disable the country's integrated air defence, and that without any kind of exit strategy, the Pentagon would not back the plan. Cameron's bid to spark Syria coup, PM pledges not to remove Assad military if they overthrow tyrant. David Cameron last night made an appeal to Syria's military and security leaders in an extraordinary attempt to spark a coup against Bashar al-Assad. The Prime Minister said the future of the country's army and security forces would be guaranteed were Assad's regime to fall. Mr Putin also defended Russia's supply of arms to the Assad regime, saying it was fulfilling legal contracts made with the legal government of Syria. In a reference to the brutal killing of drummer Rigby in Woolwich last month, the Russian president added, "Clearly the Syrian opposition is not composed all of this, but many of them are exactly the same as the ones who perpetrated the killing in London." If we equip these people, if we arm them, what is going to control and verify who is going to have these weapons, including in Europe as well? So we call all our partners, before making this dangerous step, think about it very carefully. Hundreds of Western fighters captured by pro-Assad forces. Several hundred Westerners, including Italians, have been captured fighting alongside rebels seeking to overthrow President Bashar al-Assad, government sources told Ad Kronos on Tuesday. "We are holding 300 Westerners, of whom 6 or 7 are Italian, according to the information I have. They are all converts to Islam," the source said. The case of Giuliano del Nevo, the 20-something from Genoa, killed fighting on the side of the rebels, is not an isolated case, the source told Ad Kronos. The source was referring to the reported death in Syria of a radicalised Italian Muslim convert who allegedly went to Syria to wage holy war or jihad. Italian daily Il Giornale on Tuesday reported Del Nevo's death, citing unnamed intelligence and interior ministry sources. The paper stated Del Nevo's age was between 20 and 23. It didn't say where he died in Syria and for which rebel group he was fighting. Prosecutors in his home city of Genoa in Italy's northwest said they'd been probing Del Nevo and other jihadist suspects elsewhere in the country for some time. And finally, aliens have landed in Whitby, no less. A Labour councillor, Simon Parkes, has claimed he's fathered a child with an alien and that the regular sex he has with the extra-terrestrial is causing tension in his human marriage, the Huffington Post have reported 18th of June. Simon Parkes, who represents Stakesby in Whitby Town Council, told the Northern Echo that he has had a child called Zarka with an alien he refers to as the Cat Queen. The driving instructor, who has 3 children with his human wife, said the intercourse with the alien happens about 4 times a year. "What will happen is that we will hold hands and I will say I'm ready, and then the technology I don't understand would take us up to a craft orbiting the Earth," he said. The Labour politician also claimed he was abducted by extraterrestrials as a child and that his real mother is a 9-foot-tall alien with 8 fingers. He speaks of his first encounter, which occurred while he was in the womb. Then he tells of a being which appeared by his cot when he was 6 months old and reached out to him with these 2 green stick things like bean poles. He continued, "I thought they're not Mummy's hands are pink and Mummy has thumbs. These are green and pointed and there's 4 of them. I was looking straight into its face. It entered my mind through my eyes and it sent a message down my optic nerve into my brain saying, I am your real mother, I am your more important mother." The 53-year-old recounted his experience in a YouTube clip. He describes the extraterrestrial as having human features with a kite-shaped face, huge eyes, 2 tiny holes for a nose and a thin mouth. He said, "I'm only telling you what I've seen, they could be lying to me. The reason why extraterrestrials are interested in me is not because of my physical body, but what's inside, my soul. These reptiles are as guilty as hell. They apologised several times to me. They've said that they're sorry for what they've done to your people." Parkes, who was a councillor in Hackney during the 1990s, said his experiences have not hindered his work. Fellow councillor Terry Jennison told the Yorkshire Post, "I'm completely in the dark about this. Not the only one, matey, not the only one." This presenter says, well bless him, it comes to everyone I suppose. The one good thing he does say is that he gets more common sense out of aliens than he does the guys at Scarborough Town Hall, and he may well be right. Who are we to say these things don't happen to some people? Retain an open mind, I say, or we will all be labelled Marxist liberal lovies. You have been listening to The World at 8, and I'm Lynn Mozart, and I and the team at World at 8 and Radio Britain wish you all a very happy and safe weekend.